This week on Werner's Whirligigs, we prove that you can remove the oil pan from a first-gen Dodge Cummins motor with four-wheel drive without removing the engine from the engine bay and without removing the transmission. We also consider whether it's appropriate for a man to wear an apron. This and more coming up.
Once again, I've packed a lot of information into this 30-minute video. And so here is just a list of all the steps that we're going to take to get from driving the truck into the driveway, well, in my case, rolling it, and being removed at the end. There will be chapters across the bottom as well, in case you want to jump around to any of the specific steps. It's likely that you may not need to take all of these steps, but I've included them. Everyone's situation may be slightly different than the others.
I want you all to remember that I'm just another yokel who's not educated nor a professional in what I'm doing here, and it's possible that if you rely on this video, you, your project, or the both of you might end up as a smoldering hunk of hammered dog shit. Please use common sense, be careful, and always protect your ears, eyes, face, body, and hands when doing this type of work. With that, let's keep on trucking. This video may contain peanuts. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to Werner's Whirligigs, or welcome back if you've been here before. I'm Werner, and this week we're going to be talking about my 1993 Dodge Ram W250 four-wheel drive truck with a Cummins motor. And specifically, we're going to be following up on the last episode about this truck where I lost complete oil pressure. If you don't know the backstory, I'll put the link in the description below. But really quick, I was driving on the highway. I looked down at the dash. The red oil pressure light was on. I shut the motor off immediately and coasted for about a quarter mile to my exit ramp and got a flatbed home. The truck couldn't have been running for more than 5 minutes before I noticed the light, and I just don't know how long that light was on. It may have just been right when I noticed it. So I'm a little bit concerned, and I want to take a look at the bearings and see if there's any visible signs of excessive heat or wear on them. And in order to do so, I need to remove the oil pan from the truck. Now, any of you who know anything about these Dodge trucks with the Cummins motors will know that you cannot pull the oil pan as it sits in the truck. The manual says remove the engine from the truck. And of course, that's a big pain in the butt. And I have read about online for several years now that it's doable so long as you lift the engine up in the engine bay. But lift it up how much? Lift it up how? I mean, it sounds obvious, but when I started doing it, I wasn't sure. Do I do it an inch? Do I do it 4 inches? As much as I can. So anyways, I went through the process and figured it out. And I'm here today to show you how to do it and to let you know, yes, it can be done, and I have video proof. There is one caveat. This works on a four-wheel drive truck. I am not sure, and I think that it may not be possible on a two-wheel drive truck because of the differing front suspension and maybe some other things as well. So let's jump into it. And of course, before we do anything, we're going to disconnect the battery just to make sure we don't accidentally get shocked. All right, we're under the truck now. I'm going to drain the oil, and I'm also going to try to take a sample just in a regular container, and then once I get some sample jugs, I'll send it in for analysis. This oil is cold, obviously. We're under the truck and we're looking at the driver's side bottom of the radiator, and we need to turn this little petcock here in order to start draining the antifreeze. To be honest, I don't remember what happened last time. I almost feel like I didn't use this thing. Getting this to move right away was not easy. I had to just hit it with a wrench for a moment. But now I can just start turning it, and you see it's starting to give up some liquid. Well, unfortunately, the drain valve must be clogged on the inside because I was not able to get anything but a couple of drips out of there. So we're going to move on to a different place. The next thing we can do is go to the lowest place on the coolant system, which is this return line here that's going into to the right over here into the radiator. So that right now it's on the passenger side at the low end of the radiator. Now there is no way I'm going to be able to get that clamp down there. So instead I'm going to go after this clamp here where it goes into water pump, and I'm going to disconnect it there, and then it's just going to make a mess all over everything. Alright, I'm coming in from a weird angle, but I think the camera can still see what I'm doing, kinda. So now I've got this clamp off. See, I moved the clamp back so it's sitting down here. And now it should be just a matter of loosening that hose and pulling it off. So what I'm going to do also is just heat up the rubber on this outlet here and on this hose and try to get it off that way. I was wasn't having any luck getting it to move on the fitting, and I'm thinking if I just put some heat on it, that might help out. The mess is just about to begin. Let's also take this big air line off from the air filter to the turbo. So I'm going to take those off with a 7/16 inch wrench and come back. One of the first things we'll do here is get rid of the upper radiator hose. I've already drained the coolant earlier, so we don't have to worry about coolant going everywhere. Although there still could be a little bit left in the system. So we're just going to grab this clamp here and do our best to walk it off. There we go. And then their second one is down here. There we go. All right, we'll pull this one off first, and then take this one next. Now, you've been off in the last year, so you don't have to behave like this. There we go. All right, that's it. All right, so we're back with a 16 millimeter wrench on this nut here. Okay, that's off. All right, now that we have that bracket undone, we can just unscrew the filler neck, and then we're just left with a piece down here. And we can use, I'm going to use this wrench here just to rotate it around. And it's not easy, so you just need a little bit of leverage just to get it down to a point where it comes out. There we go. Okay, there we go. So this is out. We want to take out the fan and the fan shroud now, which are here, but before we do that we need to remove the serpentine belt. So we'll move over a little bit more towards the passenger side, over here by where the alternator is. There we go. And you can see my wrench down here. And so we're going, here's the alternator, and here is the tensioner. And at the very bottom of the tensioner, there is a square hole, and that's where you're supposed to grab it. You put a 3/8 inch socket into there, and you turn it counterclockwise like you're doing lefty-loosey, and you push down on that, and it takes the tension off the belt. If I didn't have to reach around this goofy camera, it would have been easier. But that's what you need to do, and then you can unwind the belt from in there at some point. Right now I just wanted to get it off so we can get the fan out of there. Next thing we just want to remove this plug here. This leads down to the crankshaft position sensor. 1, 2. There's a third one down here, and the fourth one is down here, which is there it is. You can see it now. There's too high and too low. The top two you can't take out with a socket wrench. Unfortunately, the bottom two you have to do with a open or closed end wrench, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. I take out the top two most of the way, but leave them in there to support it, and then I take out the bottom ones, but I don't believe they come out all the way. I can't remember, so we'll see what happens. Also, let me just say, I recommend you put a blanket or a towel or something over your front grille, because you're going to be leaning on it just to protect it while you're working up here. Okay, so we'll start with these top two. Get them loose. Now you can, there's a reverse threaded nut here where the fan blade and clutch actually screw into this. I'm sorry, where the fan screws into the clutch. However, it's reverse threaded, and I have been unable to get it undone. I've seen folks do it by using some kind of an impact driver on the nut, driving it in the right direction, but I don't have that kind of tool. I have impact drivers, but you need like something with like a hammer, almost. It's more like a hammer, that so you can bang that thing in the reverse direction, like you put like a little chisel head or a drift on, and then tut, 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 in the opposite direction than you would expect for that nut to loosen, and sometimes it'll break free. Now I'm going to go after the lower nuts with my 10-inch open end wrench. All right, you can see it. I got it way down in there, and this is just a real pain in the butt. I guess it could be worse. And then this other one over here, we can kind of come at it. Ow! Oh my God, that hurt. That was a big knuckle buster. Actually, it was worse. It was a fingertip buster. All right, you get the idea. I'm going to remove these 4 bolts, and then I'll lift this thing out of here with the fan shroud. So now the top 2 screws I've taken out completely. The bottom 2 stay in the fan assembly because they can't escape. They're captive. So then what we need to do is lift out the fan assembly and the fan shroud at the same time. And also, I set aside this wire that goes down to the crankshaft position sensor. And once the fan is out, these 2 bolts can actually escape. Maybe even these 2. I'm not sure. But anyway, the way they're sitting there inside of the engine bay, they can't be backed out all the way. But once you get them out, they will fall out. So keep track of them. All right, now we're going to remove the valve cover. And then we'll just leave things like this for now, because I don't plan to leave my valve cover exposed, but we're going to remove that last valve cover here in a bit. We're going to move on towards releasing anything else that's connected to the engine so that we can lift up the engine here in the bay and then wiggle out the oil pan from underneath. So the last thing, well, one of the last things is take off the air hose that goes from the turbo into the intercooler. So I'm just going to loosen these clamps here. You don't need to do them that much. Put them back down so they don't want to pop off. I'm going to hit all four, and then I'll start wiggling and see what works best. Okay. All right, I grabbed a 16-ounce dead blow hammer just to punch these things down. Let's see if that broke it free. This one's free. Okay, let's see if I can pull the whole thing. Yep, there we go. Got the whole thing out. We'll also disconnect the air tube going into the intake side. So this is from the intercooler. I'm gonna go get a magnet and fish this thing out. I'll be back. Okay, thank goodness I was able to get that with a magnet. Didn't go very far, but you know, if I don't do it now, something I might just forget about. I think I'm going to take out the other side too. So now I'm going to take out the lower clamp. Just one of them. There we go. All right, here we are. Take a look at where we are, and then I'm going to zoom in on the engine mounting brackets. There they are down there. You can see that nut down there that's roughly in the center. So there are two nuts, one on the top and one on the bottom, that are threaded onto those threaded posts, and we're going to need to pull the nuts off of both the top and the bottom, and this is on both sides of the engine, and that will disconnect the motor itself from the mounting brackets and from the frame of the vehicle. And just so you can get acclimated to where you are, this cross member right above this is the radiator. Here's the front of the oil pan. Here's the engine mount cross member here, and right up here is where the engine mount comes through, and over here on this other side right there is the other one. We're on the passenger side, and this is where the engine mount sit. Yep, no problem. And now we're going to go and grab this one. We're going back in the old-fashioned way with a wrench. Now these topside nuts are a little more difficult, but hopefully we can get into it here just with a box end wrench. Okay. Okay. Just leave that washer on there for now. And here's this other lonely guy on the other side, but there is no way, just based on the way things are configured over here, that I'm going to be able to get my camera and the light, my hand, and the wrench all in there. So I'm going to do this off camera. I've jacked up the front of the truck. I jacked it up on the center of the axle, and I put a set of 4-ton jack stands at either end of the axle to support it. In case you didn't know, that when you have a pair of 3-ton or 2-ton jack stands, the total capacity of the two combined is the named weight. I have two 4-ton jack stands here. That does not mean they are they will hold 8 tons together. Together, they will hold 4 tons, so that's 2 tons apiece. At least that's the nomenclature I understand, and that's what I always go by. Of course, I've got a set of 4x4 wooden chocks under the back wheels, or behind the back wheels. The emergency brake is on, and for the moment the truck is in gear. That may change if I need to turn the motor over for some reason during this procedure. Now I've got a 5/8 inch socket. Easier said than done. I could have sworn it fit. Huh. I remember that being a nut. Grab the cover. Alright, then I'm just going to put a clean, dirty rag on top of that. I don't want to leave it exposed. I've been thinking that it might be a good idea to remove the grille. I just don't like the idea of having an engine hoist sitting right in front of this. If you're interested in seeing a short video about removing this grille from a first-gen truck, check out in the description below. There's a link. Now we'll wheel the engine hoist into position, being careful not to disturb the jacks under the truck. I've just connected a 3 1/4 ton shackle here. Just as a benchmark, there's about 1 1/4 inches between the top of the cross member and the bottom of the oil pan. This is the front side of the engine, the front side of the cross member here. I'll put you guys in charge of telling me when we see something happen. I'm lifting it now. I'm hand pumping it. I'm not going to use the air. Okay, let's stop there and see what happened so far. Now we've got, looks like about 1 3/4 of an inch of clearance, so we moved it a 1/2 inch. I don't really know how far we have to lift this thing. I'm going to just say just enough. I just did 4 more pumps, and it looks like we're somewhere between 2 1/4 and 2 1/2 inches now. So that would be a total of 1 to 1 1/4 inches of lift down here. Let's just look at some spots on the engine to see how much we've lifted. This is the passenger side motor mount, and you can see that the threaded post that usually comes up through the bracket about, oh, I don't know, inch and a half, is almost flush with the bracket. So it's kind of hard to see, but if you look below, you can see how much thread is showing down there. You can also see the motor mount is rotated a little bit while it's been sitting there. On the driver's side, we haven't moved as much. Maybe half of that, so 3/4 of an inch, but there's definitely been movement. If we look behind the last set of rockers, you can see that the back of the head is almost touching the firewall. It's like, gosh, let's say 1/4 of an inch away maybe. So we don't have much more room to lift here. Looking at the front of the oil pan, you can see I've removed a bunch of bolts. They're a 10mm head. I've removed all but 2 in the corners up there because I don't want it to just come falling out. And now I need to go on the other side where the sump is and remove those bolts. So starting back here behind the sump, right between the sump and the transmission, these 2 bolts in the center were the only ones that I had trouble getting to initially with just my normal setup. I just needed a small extension. Otherwise, you know, all these ones came off rather easily. Even the one on top of the cross member, I was able to actually get out with my extension, which just had a wobble connector on the end. So I've got 3 of them left in, 3 bolts left in, 1 in the back right here, and 2 in the front. And it doesn't look like anything's wanting to just fall out of here. And of course the oil is drained, so maybe I'll just finish taking all of these out. Actually, no. I think I'll loosen them and then start trying to crack the pan away from the block, and depending on how that goes, then I'll start releasing the last 3 bolts. Okay. There we go. We're back here at the back end of the tail oil pan again, and what you see in front of you, this is the oil pan right here, the sump area and the drain bolt. There's one more bolt holding it in, which I can't see. There it is. Whoa. Okay. Oops. Now, I wasn't expecting it to come out, and it didn't, but we are so close to having enough clearance here. We may have to just try to find another 1/8 of an inch or something. And before we can do anything on this end, though, we need to go back and loosen the 4 bolts that hold the oil pickup tube in place, because I believe that's going to need to come out with this in order to create enough room. All right, we're at the passenger side front of the oil pan now, and you can see that where the oil pickup bolts into the bottom of the block, those nuts need to come off next, and then there's 2 more nuts for the oil pan bracket. I'm going to do this off camera and come back to you.
This is my horrid attempt to show you where the bolts go that hold the pickup line brackets. After we remove the oil pan, I'll show you some footage without the pan so it's easier to see. In case I wasn't clear enough, the 4 bolts that we're talking about here need to be removed with the oil pan still in place, suspended a few inches below the engine block. Once you get those 4 bolts out, then the pickup is going to drop into the oil pan, and we're going to remove the oil pan together with the pickup. I don't think it's going to be that bad on the way out, but putting this all back together, I suspect, is going to be a little bit more tricky. After we get those 4 bolts out of the oil pickup, then all we have to do is slide the oil pan towards the back of the truck, underneath the transmission, and Bob's your uncle.
Now that the oil pan is out of the way, it's a little bit easier to show you where some of these screws are that you're removing in order to get the oil pickup tube out. So of course, here are the 2 where the pickup connects to the bottom of the block. That's straightforward, and you can see those fairly well with the pan down. But then there's these 2 others over here. There's one here that is just directly in front of the cross member. That one, and there's one behind on the other side of the cross member that you need to remove, and those bolts are holding up the mounting bracket that supports the pickup line as it travels from the front to the back of the pan. And now I'm behind the cross member, and here's the other one where the bolt will sit holding that bracket for the pickup tube. You can see there's a number of these along the side of the block. However, not all of them are used. I'm going to start wrapping it up here. I hope this is going to be helpful to some of you guys out there that like to do your own work. I'll say that I went online again to try to find out information about 2-wheel drives, and it's still unclear to me. I did find a video where a guy took the oil pan off of a 2-wheel drive truck, but he really had to lift the motor way up. Recall, we only lifted it about 1.25–1.5 inches, and that was sufficient. So it's unclear whether this really is an easy job for 2-wheel drive. I've seen folks do this on the 2nd and 3rd gen 4-wheel drive trucks. Watch West Work, for example, has a video about doing it in a 4-wheel drive 3rd gen truck. And so I have a feeling it's might be somewhat similar, but there are other things involved, other things that need to be disassembled and reassembled. So if you're still watching, thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around this long. I really appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's worthy, and if you want to subscribe, please do. I won't send you anything, but you will know when my new videos come out, which is always going to be roughly on the 1st, 11th, and 21st of the month. I'm grateful for for the opportunity to share this information with you, and look forward to seeing you the next time. So long for now.